Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the zero running back draft strategy for 2024 fantasy football. We'll start today's video off by breaking down how the zero running back draft strategy works. After that, we're going to go ahead and discuss when you want to actually utilize this strategy and the formats that most benefit from using the zero running back strategy. After that, we'll be breaking down all of my favorite zero running back targets and my favorite handcuffs, closing out the video by doing a mock draft where I will show you guys how I would look to utilize this strategy if I was doing a real fantasy football draft for 2024. Before we can get on into things, though, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into the zero running back draft strategy breakdown for 2024 fantasy football. Now, doing a zero running back draft involves waiting until at least round 7 or 8 until you draft your first running back. This allows you to load up at the quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end position, as well as your flex spot or your flex spots early on. The reason as to why you would want to do this is because the running back position is incredibly volatile and gets injured at a much higher rate, as well as you are able to avoid the running back dead zone, the dreaded running back dead zone in the middle of drafts, where the hit rate at the running back position is far from ideal. Now, last season, actually, there was a shocking amount of running backs that hit in the dead zone, but based upon statistical analysis, based upon a very long period of time, you should really be trying to avoid the running back dead zone. On average, over the last 9 seasons, dating back to 2015, a running back drafted inside of the top 20 at the running back position misses 3.08 games with a 19.44% chance of missing 6 or more games, where at the wide receiver position, under the exact same parameters, you're only missing on average 1.82 games with a 11.7% chance of missing 6 or more games. All of those numbers I found were from the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel. I am friends with those guys. Those guys are awesome. So if you want to check them out, make sure that you do. So based upon those numbers, it is clear that the wide receiver position is much more likely to stay healthy compared to the running back position. The running back position inherently gets hurt at a much higher clip. It doesn't take a doctor, shout out to Johnny Sins, to be able to figure that out. Now, in this strategy, it is very important to understand why it works out so well. And that is because utilizing the waiver wire is key. While you are going to try to take shots deep in the draft, Stephen Curry range, from fucking full court, trying to drain a 3 and right and hit that Willy Wonka golden ticket, the waiver wire is vital to success. Since you already have all of the other positions loaded to the gills, you are going to spend a majority of your fab budget or your waiver wire pickups trying to find that next running back league winner, the next Kyren Williams from last season. You mix drafting the late round running backs, right? Smashing the running back button like its name was Sophia Rain late in drafts, and you match that with the waiver wire, you are going to be able to cycle running backs in and out of your lineup. This strategy should not be used, in my opinion, by newer fantasy football players. Now, could newer fantasy football players figure this out? 100%, but I believe If you are new to fantasy football, if this is your first year playing, you will find it very difficult to figure out which running backs you want to start weekly, or even which running backs you should be picking up off the waiver wire. While I give out advice every single week during the regular season on the waiver wire, the players to pick up, which running backs you guys should start and sit, and I even do running back rankings weekly, so you want to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you are new to the channel, hit that like button as well. To me, even with all that help, I do think it is going to be difficult for you. So I think this is more of a expert level strategy. Again, anyone could do it, but I think if you have a better understanding of how fantasy football works, if you have a greater understanding of how you want to utilize your fab budget, how you want to utilize the waiver wire, it definitely makes it easier. So you might have a question, Nick, when should you use this strategy? In my opinion, this strategy is most useful in full or half PPR leagues. If you are doing this in a standard league, it simply isn't as useful. You also want to be in a format that is going to push you towards starting more wide receivers weekly. Meaning not your vanilla, your missionary, one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. You want to be in a league where you're starting the one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex, or a one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, and two flexes, meaning that you can start 4 wide receivers at once in either of those formats. The more flexes, the more wide receivers, the merrier. If you are in a league where your league is incredibly deep, right? You're starting 4, 5 flexes a week. Again, is that the typical format? Fuck no, baby. Most people play with either 1 flex or 2 flex. But if you're in that deeper league, that is going to give you even more reasons to hammer the wide receiver position if you're starting 5, 6 wide receivers potentially at once. And you also ideally would like to be in a room where your league mates they're fiending, right, for the running back position. They think it's 2018 where you need to go robust running back and smash 3 running backs in a row, right? And that is going to allow you to scoop up more value at the wide receiver position because the wide receivers that would previously be a couple picks before are going to be able to fall your way. My final note before we get into the 0 running back targets and my favorite handcuffs, as well as eventually getting into the mock draft, it is that you should not be going into your draft thinking you have to do any given strategy. Play things by ear, and if your league mates are smashing wide receiver, then you might want to hop on the double hero running back train or the hero running back train, or you might just decide that you want to flat out select the best players available. If you go into your draft thinking you need to do one certain strategy, I need that quarterback in round 4. Well, guess what? If the quarterback that you thought would fall to you in round 4 isn't there, then you start reaching, you're putting yourself inside of a metaphorical box, and you're going to end up screwing yourself by reaching on certain positions. So make sure that you keep calm in your draft and you don't just think, oh, I need to get that running back in round 5, or oh, I need to have 3 wide receivers by round 4, otherwise this, that, and the other thing, right? Don't put yourself into that mindset, right? If the draft falls your way, go ahead and attack it based upon how you believe you should, right? If the league is falling your way, people are smashing the running back button early, then go ahead and utilize that 0 running back draft strategy. Now we move into my favorite 0 running back targets. At number 1, we got Jonathan Brooks of the Carolina Panthers, aggregate ADP running back 28 at pick 84, which is the end of round 7. Now, Jonathan Brooks is more than likely going to miss the first couple of games of the season, but based upon his profile coming out of college, this is a guy that could be the clear workhorse running back of the Carolina Panthers, a guy that could be catching passes out of the backfield. I believe he is proficient in that. Now, obviously, it's going to take some time, and you're not going to be able to start him right out the gate, but he could end up being this reliable running back 2 for you down the stretch of the season once he is healthy. He is a very high upside pick at the end of round 7. Next up is Brian Robinson Jr. of the Washington Commanders. He got shot and he's still breathing. Aggregate ADP running back 32, pick 93, end of round 8. Now, the next two guys after Brian Robinson, Devin Singletary and Javonte Williams, all go at the end of round 8 and are all back-to-back-to-back picks. In my opinion, I would personally rather have Javonte Williams ranked the highest, then Brian Robinson, and then Devin Singletary. Javonte Williams is in a Sean Payton offense, and the Sean Payton offense normally is able to churn out high upside running backs for fantasy football. Javonte Williams has looked great from all of the tape I've seen recently. He looks fully healthy. He looks like that old Javonte Williams. They fed him the rock at an incredibly high clip last year coming off an injury. Now he is 1 year more removed from the injury, looking fully healthy. I expect huge return on Javonte Williams as the running back 33. Brian Robinson Jr., sure, the Washington Commanders offensive line is basically a fucking turnstile, but Brian Robinson Jr. put up solid numbers last season. He could definitely be a guy that you use reliably early on in the season before you potentially unlock that chest, right? You hit the fucking what is that called? The mystery box in Call of Duty, in Zombies, and you spin the ray gun, right? You find that crazy running back off the waiver wire. Brian Robinson could be reliable for you. And if Austin Eckler truly is washed, then he definitely has more upside than people are talking about. Devin Singletary, another one of those guys that just feels pretty safe. His role as the lead back on the Giants should be his, assuming that Tyrone Tracy doesn't go crazy, which I think is possible. And we're going to be talking about him a little bit later. Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans, he is in competition with Tony Pollard, but Tony Pollard did not look very nice last season. Running back 35 off the board, picked 99 early round 9. You are just hoping that he ends up being the lead running back on the Titans, and even if he isn't, he had a bunch of productive games last year with Derrick Henry being the lead back. At number 6 and 7, we got the Cowboys running backs, Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle. Now, you're definitely getting a big discount on Dowdle compared to Zeke. Zeke goes end of round 9, Dowdle end of round 13. I think this is kind of one of those scenarios where Zeke will start off being the guy, and then if he looks like dust, which is entirely possible, Dowdle could end up stealing a lot of opportunities, and if Dowdle ends up becoming the lead back on the team, he has that humongous upside because the Dallas Cowboys offense is going to score a bunch of points. At number 8, we got Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. Pick 115, so mid-round 10. His ADP continues to rise. I also do like Zach Moss, but we have talked about Zach Moss so much recently that I chose not to include him. I definitely do like both of those backs, but with Chase Brown coming off the board as cheaper, I think he fills this category a little bit better. And if Chase Brown becomes the guy due to the high kind of big play percentage that the guy possesses, he could end up being a solid piece for you, even if he isn't the lead back early on. Jerome Ford is one of those guys that you draft to be the guy early on for you, kind of like a Devin Singletary, right? If you draft Jonathan Brooks, you could draft Jerome Ford because we know damn well 9-inch Nicholas Chubb isn't going to come back until a little bit later on in the season. And if he comes back, he might not even be fully healthy. They might look to slowly ease him in, use the just the tip technique. And if that is the case, then Jerome Ford could end up being very useful for fantasy football for 10, 12 weeks, and maybe even the whole season if Nick Chubb doesn't look like himself. We closed out with J.K. Dobbins of the Chargers, end of round 11. Now, I understand when you hear the name J.K. Dobbins, you instantly get fucking PTSD, right? You instantly think about how this guy has metaphorically bent you over a table and shoved a pool cue up your ass, Vito style, from The Sopranos, right? And I get it, but where he's basically coming off the board as such a late pick, the risk there, sure, it's blatant. It's blatant. The guy gets hurt. Like, he'll go, I don't know if he has kids, but he could go push a kid on the swings, right? And the kid comes back, fucking hits him in the face. He has a concussion for the next 20 seasons, right? He's out for life, right? He's just permanently fucked up. CTE City, right? The guy goes to take a shower, he slips, he falls, and everything's broken, right? He's down for the count and he can't get up, right? So J.K. Dobbins, while there is risk, there's been a lot of hype for him out of camp. Now we move to my favorite handcuffs. And we ain't talking about the handcuffs that are technically my favorite, which are the ones that are pink that me and my wife use. But at the end of the day, we're going to be talking here about my favorite handcuffs for fantasy football, starting with Blake Corum of the Los Angeles Rams, early 11th round. This guy produced at Michigan and is going to be seeing some work because I don't think they're going to just send Kyren Williams to the Wolves with as many snaps as he got last season, because Kyren Williams is kind of an injury-prone back. You're able to get a running back that could go nuclear if something was to happen to Kyren Williams. Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks, late round 11. Now, there appears to be more and more steam for Kenneth Walker. But in a vacuum, these guys are very comparable, in my opinion. You could even argue that Charbonnet is better than Walker. So if something was to happen to Walker, Zach Charbonnet would end up as like a top 18 guy in the rankings weekly. Tyler Algier of the Falcons, late round 13. Now, I keep hearing more and more about how they want to give the ball to him in sometimes instead of Bijan. And to be honest with you, I think that's a little bit fugazi, but we've seen Tyler Algier is very solid. Before Bijan came to town, Algier looked like a very competent running back, and had Bijan not gotten drafted, I think Tyler Algier would have gotten steamed up very highly in fantasy football last season. But now we live in a world with Bijan, and if Bijan's able to stay healthy, Tyler Algier will probably be flat out irrelevant. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Alexis, Texas, if something happens to him, knock on wood, Algier has that big game upside. Ty Chandler of the Vikings, late round 13. The main running back on the Vikings is Aaron Jones. We all know that Aaron Jones isn't the definition of health. Ty Chandler is a very competent backup back. Is he like the next Bo Jackson or something? No. But on a team that I believe is going to look to run the rock a lot more this season with J.J. McCarthy or mono man Sam Darnold under center, Chandler looks good. I've seen Chandler in the past. I saw Chandler in preseason. He looks good. Tyrone Tracy of the Giants. Now, I know that Gray technically worked ahead of him or kind of outperformed him in the preseason, but if you're basing your whole fucking takes off of week 1 performances in preseason, you're probably going to get a million fucking things wrong, right? Take it with a grain of salt. I think he could work ahead of Devin Singletary because it's not like Devin Singletary is some world beater. Khalil Herbert of the Bears. Both these guys, Tracy and Herbert, both going undrafted right now. Khalil Herbert worked ahead of DeAndre Swift. Again, am I going to bet my mortgage that Herbert's the starter in week 1 over DeAndre Swift? The answer to that would be very resounding no. No. Dikembe, no. I don't believe that. But I do think that this could end up being a 2-headed backfield or a 3-headed backfield. And if there was an injury, if the Bears offense lives up to my personal expectation, I think it'll be really solid. Then Khalil Herbert could end up being a reliable running back 2 for you. Again, the biggest key here is hammering in on high upside backs late, while also mixing in some of the safer bets, right? Like Javonte Williams, the Ezekiel Elliott, the Jerome Ford, while you're also taking shots on upside. And then if some of these running backs aren't working out, you're going to drop them like it's hot and churn the waiver wire every single week trying to find the next great fucking shiny Pokemon off of the waiver wire. Now we are going to go ahead and move into the mock draft section of the video. So I'll show you guys how to actually utilize the zero running back draft strategy. But before we do that, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you don't know what Underdog Fantasy is, it is the best place to do fantasy football, best ball drafts this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. At the end of every single week, they have their main tournament, Best Ball Mania 5, $25 to enter, $1.5 million to first place. They're going to be dropping other tournaments at a variety of prices as the summer goes along, so make sure you guys check that out. It is a good way to practice. Promo code Notorious, or click on the link in the video description for the additional plus $250, as well as receiving a special pick. If you guys also want to get my rankings, the link to them is in the video description. The PPR tiered rankings and cheat sheet are available for you right now. So let's go ahead and stop babbling and get on in to the mock draft. All right, so now we're over on Fantasy Pros. We're going to be doing a 12-team PPR mock draft from the 5th overall spot, drafting against ESPN, NFL, and Sleeper ADP. Again, we are stacking the deck in our favor. The roster positions are favorable. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 5 bench spots. So let's get on in to the draft. So the number 5 spot is solid for this. You can do this at really any draft position, though, to be completely honest with you. I just think 5 is solid because you can get one of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or Amon-Ra St. Brown guaranteed. So the draft here begins with Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, and Breece Hall, which leaves us our pick at the wide receiver position. You could go ahead and go Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or Justin Jefferson here. Personally, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked the highest. At the wide receiver position, I feel as though the safety is incredible from Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's like wrapping a Trojan around your squad. The guy is in one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL in terms of pass attempts. You're going to be seeing a lot of pass attempts from Jared Goff, and a majority of them are going to go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy could easily replicate the numbers he put up last season as a top 5 points per game wide receiver, and inside of the first round, he feels like an incredibly comfy pick. So after Amon-Ra St. Brown, we see Jamar Chase followed by Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Saquon Barkley, J.T. Gibbs, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Derrick Henry, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, and Brandon Ayuk. We have seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 running backs already off of the board through the first 19 picks. So we are going to continue with drafting the wide receivers. Now, if you want to get that quarterback, that tight end in the first couple of rounds, I would advise that waiting until the third round is probably your best bet, because they typically don't really go in the second round. At the 208 would feel like a reach. Now, if you're at like the 211 and you really want Laporta or Kelsey or Josh Allen or whoever your highest ranked quarterback is, then go right ahead. But at the 2.08, it definitely to me would feel like a reach to take either a quarterback or a tight end. If you weren't looking to utilize the zero running back strategy, then you could go ahead and take ETN here or Devon Achane, but I'm going to go wide receiver with my highest ranked wide receiver, and that is Drizzy Drake London. I think that Drake London and Chris Olave are a little bit risky in the minds of many, and I definitely kind of feel more so in the way of Olave, but I understand that Drake London didn't end up paying dividends last season, but I think the upside here really relies on the quarterback position of Kirk Cousins and the coaching being a little bit better, and I think both of those will be the case, and Drake London is going to be soaring and flying because there's not a star in heaven that we can't reach. Shout out to Troy Bolton. Drake London, Isaiah Pacheco, Sam Laporta, Travis Etienne, Travis Kelce, Chris Olave, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Michael Pittman Jr. So the top 2 quarterbacks and the top 2 tight ends are off the board, but that is A-okay. I am 100% fine with waiting. So our team thus far, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drizzy Drake London. Now, for me personally, it would be very hard to resist taking Devon 2 Chains at this pick due to the league winning upside he possesses. He could literally be a top 3 running back. This dude was pantsing defenses all of last season. He's on one of the best offenses on paper in the National Football League, a team that is going to look to give Devon Achane a bigger piece of the pie. But we're sticking to the wide receivers here. We're sticking with the wide receivers early. I think McBride could very well fall into the 4th round. There's times where I see McBride in the 5th round, so I don't feel super ambitious to take him here. And I'd be fine with the quarterback in the 4th or 5th round as well. So Jalen Hurts here, while I do love him and I could easily see him being the quarterback number 1, the tush push, obviously, the tush push merchant himself has been very valuable. But I'm going to stick with the wide receivers. Now, Jalen Waddle's currently dealing with a minor injury. Nothing to worry about right now. If he's still dealing with that injury come late August, then it's time to hit the fucking panic button. But right now, I'm not panicking too much. Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, DJ Moore. I love all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those wide receivers. Now, I do think it would be smart to play the ADP game in a lot of scenarios. But since we're not at the edge here, we're just going to pick the guy that I've ranked the highest, which would be either Nico Collins or DJ Moore. If you wanted to take Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, or Jalen Waddle, though, I wouldn't really argue with you too much. I am so infatuated with DJ Moore this season. I really love his upside in Chicago with Caleb Williams. I love Nico Collins' upside in Houston. I think the Houston Texans are going to be a rocket ship. Nico Collins was one of the most effective wide receivers in terms of efficiency last season. So we're going to go with Nico Collins. But again, if you wanted any of these guys, I'm not going to argue too much with you on that. So after Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Devon Achane, James Cook, Cooper Kupp, Josh Jacobs. Cooper Kupp's ADP continues to rise. Jalen Hurts, Debo Samuel, Rashad with 2A's White, Stephon Diggs, DJ Moore, Lamar Jackson, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle, and Kenneth Walker. So we end up being so very close, but no cigar there on getting Jalen Waddle. So looking at the running backs, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon still available at wide receiver, Devontae Smith, Malik Neighbors, and Amari Cooper. So the question here would be, do we want to take the risk on taking either Malik Neighbors here? Malik Neighbors is my highest ranked wide receiver. I like Devontae Smith as well. I'm starting to like him a little bit more. I've heard some chatter about him, and thinking about the Kellen Moore offense might be very beneficial for Devontae Smith. So the question would be, do I want to lock in my flex spot here so I'd have all 4 wide receivers, or do I want to go ahead and get my quarterback or tight end? Now, it's very unlikely that if I take Malik Neighbors here that Anthony Richardson comes back, and I don't think it's super likely that if I take Malik Neighbors that Trey McBride would come back either. Now, the quarterback and tight end position is going to vary heavily in terms of where they get drafted from league to league. You're going to be a league where Mahomes goes in the fucking first round. You might be in a league where Mahomes doesn't go until the 3rd or the 4th round, where quarterbacks are falling. Same thing goes with the tight end position. So I'm going to go ahead and secure the position that I feel as though I just like a little bit better, and I want to get Anthony Richardson here because I do really like McBride, Andrews, I like Kincaid, I like Pitts, I like Ferguson. Like, I feel a little bit more confident. Now, again, that's not to say that I don't love Kyler Murray or any of these other guys, but Anthony Richardson has been a staple of so many of my fantasy football teams this offseason. Someone in the comment section, I've mentioned this a bunch of times, called him Anthony Injured Son, and while that is very funny, it is also kind of true. The guy did get hurt a bunch last season, but when this dude is healthy, he has the upside to be a top 3, maybe even the number 1 quarterback in all of fantasy football. Now, his ADP is pick 51, whereas McBride's ADP is 48. So we could take that leap and hope he falls back to us. Sometimes you want to play the ADP game, and ultimately, I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. And if we get stuck with Kyler Murray a little bit later, that'll be fine with me. We're going to go ahead and get Trey McBride, who I've ranked as my tight end number 3. But ultimately, I think it wouldn't be shocking if he was the tight end 1. The guy is downright solid in an offense that I expect to be very solid with Kyler Murray now 1 year further removed from that injury that definitely inhibited him last season. After Trey McBride, Joe Mixon, Malik Neighbors, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper, Aaron Jones, and Tank Dell. So to anyone that was a little bit confused with what I did because I was basically just slobbing on the knob like corn on the cob on Anthony Richardson, when I looked at ADP, I simply played the ADP game. While I wanted Anthony Richardson, there was a good chance that Anthony Richardson potentially fell back to me in the 5th round, whereas I didn't think there was good of a chance of Trey McBride falling back to me in the 5th round. And that reason why it's called the ADP game is because you look at the average draft position of the player and you try to think, what is more likely that I'm able to get the quarterback falling my way or the tight end? You could do it at running back or wide receiver. It's also very useful to look at the draft board here. As you can see, multiple teams have quarterbacks, multiple teams have tight ends, which wouldn't really break the tie in this scenario, but in other scenarios where, you know, maybe no one has a quarterback here and 2 people have the tight end, then you might think you could potentially get bent over a table by someone stealing Anthony Richardson away from you. Again, the Anthony Richardson pick is all about upside. I get that he is risky, but I say this all the time. As you get deeper and deeper into the draft, you need to stop wrapping condoms around your team, trying to be as safe as possible. You need to take the high upside shots. I get it. The first 3-4 rounds, be as safe as possible. But once the 5th round begins, I'm starting to rip that condom off and I'm raw dogging the draft, going for the upside of AR-15. After Anthony Richardson, Mark Andrews, CJ Stroud, Higgins, George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, Kyler Murray, Ramondre Stevenson, George Pickens, James Conner, Joe Burrow, Kyle Pitts, and Dave Montgomery. So we made a great decision. on not taking the wide receiver there because of how many quarterbacks and tight ends came off of the board. And that will come with experience, right? The more mock drafts you guys do, or the more mock drafts you watch me do, the more you'll realize the sweet spots in the draft where the quarterback runs could occur. And based on what I've seen, the 6th round is where typically you start to see a lot of quarterbacks come off of the board. Like if quarterbacks, people are waiting, right? You might see Stroud, Burrow, Murray, Richardson all go within the next fucking 4 picks, and Dak Prescott probably won't fall back into the 7th round. Now, 2 of these teams already have a quarterback, so maybe, but getting Dak in the 7th round feels like something that was easy as 1, 2, 3 ABC a couple of weeks ago, but now it feels like not a very strong reality, right? Doctor Strange looks at all the realities. Most realities have Dak Prescott not falling back to the middle of the 7th round, especially the late 7th round. Again, that'd be great for me, though, because I'm a huge fan of Dak Prescott. So looking now, we got our quarterback, we got our tight end, we have our 3 wide receivers. So here, if you wanted to jump ship, you're like, fuck it, I'm doing modified, 0, running back, I'm scared, I'm shaking in my boots, then my pick here would be Zamir White. But I am no jabroni here. I'm going to continue to stay on the ship. You know, the captain goes down with the ship, and I don't think this ship's going down. I think this ship is at full mast. No diddy. We're going wide receiver here. So it's either Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Ridley. I like all these guys except for Keenan Allen, but I'm starting to come around a little bit more on Keenan Allen if I'm being blatantly honest. But the pick here is one of these guys. Now, I think realistically, we could end up getting one of those guys in the 7th round, but I don't think it's like the most likely scenario. So we're just going to go ahead and get the guy that I like the most here. I think Chris Godwin is the safest. I think that Deontay Johnson's pretty safe as well, but I'm hunting for upside here. We're going with Rashee Rice. Now, we know one thing about Rashee Rice, and that was that he had a huge stretch down the end of last season and into the playoffs where he was getting a bazillion targets. His quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, if you haven't heard of him, he is the best quarterback in the National Football League. So you are getting the potential wide receiver 1, who I believe will be the wide receiver 1 on the Chiefs in the 6th round. Now, there is the suspension narrative. Could he get suspended 100%? But I'm thinking it's getting less and less likely as the weeks move along. Now, his ADP is pick 81, so I think we might actually be able to get him in the next round. So we're going to play the ADP game here and go with our favorite wide receiver, which would be, normally we go Chris Godwin, so this time we'll go Terry McLaurin. I think you guys want to spread out if you're doing like 10 different drafts on the different guys that you want to get. Terry McLaurin has basically been a career guy that everyone gives the gawk 9,000 special to, but he never ends up paying off because the quarterback position is weighing him down like a ton of bricks. In my opinion, this season would be the one where he finally is able to break out of that, but I thought the same thing last season with Sam Howell, and that didn't end up working out. So we're back up here, and we're to stag Rashee Rice here, again, for all the reasons that I laid out before, and then we are going to go hammer time, MC Hammer style, on the running back position. So now, the wide receivers we got are Ahmad-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Nico Collins, and Terry McLaurin. And then we got that high upside Rashee Rice, who we can cycle in and out of the lineup with Terry McLaurin or any of these other guys. And now we just get to go to bat. We get to tee off batting practice. It's like when you go to the batting cages and they just start pitching the ball to you quickly. That's what we're doing here. We're just taking fucking home run moonshots at the running back position. First, it's a debate between Jaylen Warren and Javonte Williams. Jaylen Warren, I think, could be productive while Najee Harris is productive. And I think that Jaylen Warren's better than Najee Harris, but I don't know if the team will ever truly commit to him like that. So we're going to go ahead and go with Javonte Williams, who I think it feels pretty safe to assume at this point he's the locked and loaded running back 1. Now, a couple of months ago, it seemed like Javonte Williams was going to get cut. It seemed like Javonte Williams was a bum. Jaleel McLaughlin was going to be the guy, or Audric Estime. But the more and more you read into the tea leaves will show you that Javonte Williams is going to be the lead back on the team. And now batters up, we get to bat yet again, and we are going to go for Tyjae Spears. Now, Tyjae Spears more than likely will be behind Tony Pollard, and Tony Pollard actually has has looked solid through the preseason. He looks a little bit more explosive than what we saw last year in Dallas, because last year there was a lot of time where he'd get the ball and it looked like he was in quicksand, but he did kind of have a couple of games where he picked things up. While I joke and make fun of Tony Pollard all the time, he is a little bit better than even I give him credit for. But Tyjae Spears was able to put up some solid games last year while not even being the lead back on the team, right? That big game up against the Dolphins where the Tennessee Titans came back and I wanted to jump off a fucking roof as a Dolphins fan up against the Colts. But again, he is in the game coming from behind, doggy style, right? Because they'd sub Derrick Henry out. They bring Spears in for the pass catching ability. I think he's a better pass catcher than Pollard. I like that guess because I think that Will Levis and this Tennessee Titans offense under their new head coach, Callahan, I think that the Tennessee Titans are going to be a big surprise for a lot of people this season. So we're going to go ahead and draft Tyjae Spears here. And then again, we're just going to keep teeing off at the running back position. Now we will want to mix in wide receivers eventually because we want to be starting 4 wide receivers every single week. So realistically, you will eventually have to start taking wide receivers again. We don't need another quarterback though, or a tight end, because the way you draft this team, if you're taking Richardson in the 5th round, you believe Anthony Richardson is going to be the second coming of whatever the best quarterback you think. Like, compare him to Lamar Jackson. This is the next Lamar Jackson, right? Running quarterback. I know Anthony Richardson is more than running. He has a better arm than people give him credit for, but you get what I mean. He's the next Lamar Jackson. He's the next Jalen Hurts. He's the quarterback numero uno. Trey McBride, you draft him in the 4th round. You're thinking he's a top 3 tight end minimum. You don't need another one, because when are you ever going to play the other one? Unless he's hurt, knock on wood, or unless he's on a bye week. So I can figure that shit out when one of those ends up potentially happening, and the bye is obviously going to happen. The injury, you never know. So then we're going to go with Jerome Ford, F-150. I would like to play him over Tyjae Spears early on in the season. I do think eventually Nick Chubb could take back the workhorse role in this offense, but with that kind of an injury where your leg gets that messed up, again, I'm as much of a doctor as Manuel Ferreira, but I do think that Jerome Ford is a solid pick, and I've just continued to take this guy. Even when I'm doing not zero running back, he has been a main target of mine. So now we're back up to bat yet again here, and we have 3 running backs, so we definitely need to take another one in a row here. Best running backs: Antonio Gibson, Ty Chandler, Rico Dowdle, Jaleel McLaughlin. Now you could handcuff Javonte, right? Maybe you think you're not as sure in Javonte, because to be honest with you guys, until like about a week ago, I was not sold on Javonte Williams, but now that I am, I don't really feel the need to draft Jaleel McLaughlin. But if you wanted to, that's a fine strategy, right? You draft Zeke and Rico Dowdle. Guess what? You're getting the back, because it is kind of up to debate. You get the back, right? With Denver, you draft Jaleel, you draft Javonte. Guess what? You got the guy. You got one of them. Now, week 1 might be a little bit more of a mystery, but you're going to have the guy. Rico, I like more than Ty Chandler. You might just get hit with the Rico McMillan, because I feel as though Ty Chandler's upside comes from an injury, whereas Rico Dowdle could just straight up overtake Zeke, right? I don't really see Aaron Jones. Like, again, some people might hate Aaron Jones because of what he did last season, but when he was healthy, and they were actually using him correctly, he was productive. Zeke also was better than people give him credit for last season, but I think there's a much clearer path to Rico Dowdle fucking leapfrogging over Zeke compared to Ty Chandler leapfrogging Aaron Jones. So we go with Rico Dowdle there, and then with our last 2 bench spots, one of those will be a wide receiver, the other will be a running back. Now, I'm not reading off all of the names because we don't need this part to be a million minutes long towards the end where we're doing the mock draft. We're just mainly focusing on the ideology here and how you actually look to employ it here. So then we're going to go ahead and go wide receiver. And since we have guys, again, like to some, like Drake London, Nico Collins aren't the most safe. I think Nico Collins is very safe. I think McLaurin's actually a pretty safe bet as well. I think Rice is a safe bet. Drake London's probably the most risky guy we've got here. So we're going to take more shots, right? We are looking for the highest upside possible, in my opinion, late in the draft. So we're going to go ahead and go wide receiver here. And again, we do take this guy a lot, but I think there's a reason to do it, and that is because he is going to be the number 1 receiver on the Chargers. Now, there is currently an injury to Justin Herbert, the pervert, and the way that Harbaugh works is he doesn't want to spit out pause. What is happening there? He's not giving us a correct answer. So if Justin Herbert is severely fucked up, we will eventually figure that out. But as of right now, I'm not too worried about that. And I think that Joshua Palmer, with the injury to Ladd McConkey, is in the driver's seat here to be the wide receiver 1. And then we're going to go with another running back. And let's go... I feel like normally we would go Tyron Tracy. This time we'll go Braylon Allen. Now, he is a guy that's locked up. Don't let me out because Breece is there. But I do think Braylon Allen on paper, behind Jonathan Brooks, probably the second most talented running back in this draft class. Looks solid in preseason. He's looked solid in camp from what I've read. So we'll go ahead and get Braylon Allen. Again, completely and utterly useless unless something happens to Breece and we don't root for injuries. But if something was to happen to Breece, then Braylon Allen could be that hammer piece for us. Now we're going to go ahead and draft a kicker and a defense. We'll go ahead and get the kicker first. We'll get Brandon Aubrey of the Dallas Cowboys. And then we're going to go ahead and draft a defense. Now, what I will tell you is if your league doesn't make you draft a kicker or a defense and you're doing this strategy, you could just draft 2 more running backs right here instead of the kicker and the defense, and then pick up the kicker and defense after. And then you have 2 more lottery ticket shots. And then we're going to go with the defense real quick. The defense strategy: draft a defense that's going up against a not so hot opponent week 1, or up against a opponent in week 1 you believe will struggle. So you're going to be hunting for the teams that you think are going to come out a little bit slow. Now, I love the Falcons. I got Drake London. I think Drake London could have a big game while the Steelers go up against Drake London. Maybe they sack old man Kirk Cousins a couple of times. So I found myself taking the Steelers a bunch. But we are going to be doing a video because we're getting so close to late August, early September, where we break down the defenses you need to draft. And then guess what? Week 2, maybe the Steelers have a bad matchup. Then you just drop them and you pick up a new defense with a better opponent. And I do streaming defense videos every single week. So our team is Anthony Richardson, Javonte Williams, Tajay Spears, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Nico Collins, Trey McBride, Terry McLaurin, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, Brandon Aubrey, Rashee Rice, Jerome Ford, Rico Dowdle, Joshua Palmer, and Braylon Allen. I love this team. It makes me happy. Shout out to Simple Jack. To be honest with you, I think I would have liked the team a little bit more not going Terry McLaurin and instead going for maybe a guy like Calvin Ridley, who I like, or Chris Godwin, Jaden Riley Reed. But I don't take Terry McLaurin often. I do think it's important to diversify your teams, because if we draft in the 6th round every single time, for instance, Calvin Ridley, if Calvin Ridley goes down, that is a huge hole on all of my teams. Now, if you're in one league, just draft the guys you like the most in that spot, because you don't have to diversify. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. This is the whole draft board if you guys want to pause and look at things. Love you guys all so much. Let me know down below in the comment section. Are you going to look to try to do this strategy, or do you think this shit just doesn't work? Because a lot of people think that, and I think this video should show you that you can do it, but some people will still live in la la land and think, Nick, it's impossible. So thank you guys all so much for watching. I love you guys all so much. Make sure that you guys click on one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.